Hi, friends. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to have you here. We have a very informative webinar planned for you. Please note that this webinar will be recorded and you'll have a link to the recording once we conclude. My name is Ashish Joy. I lead product marketing at UpCodes. I'm joined today by Adam Martin and Ninad Garware. Adam Martin is a project architect at Lake Flato's development studio, where he collaborates on designing in excellent environments. Adam obtained his Bachelor of Architecture from the University of Texas at Austin and has worked for Will Bruder, SQ Dumez Ripple, and Bastille Studio, among others. He sees architecture as the confluence of craft, place, practice, and cultural identity. To better understand his profession, he also sought out the fringes of traditional architectural practice, from working as a lead designer in a custom fabrication shop to obtaining a master's degree focused on architecture and real estate development at Woodbury University. When he's not at work, you can find Adam expanding his library and art collection, cold brewing coffee, and having one-on-one conversations with a variety of passionate and talented people. Ninad Garware is customer success manager here at UpCodes. He is also a licensed architect who has designed multiple projects spanning urban design and master planning, mixed-use developments, high-rise residential projects, commercial developments, and more at firms like HOK, Handel Architects, and Curtis and Ginsberg Architects. We're very excited to be here with you today. And here's a quick overview of what we have planned for today. We'll take some time to tell you more about UpCodes, what's included in the platform, and the value our users are finding. But then we'll spend a majority of our time hearing from Adam, who will share how his organization approaches building codes and what they've learned, as well as how they leverage UpCode's project management tool to save time and remove compliance guesswork. After that, we've saved time at the end for your questions, so feel free to add in your questions at any time during this webinar via the Q&A button in your Zoom window. So let's take just a couple minutes to look at the UpCodes platform. Historically, we developed UpCodes to help you determine code requirements for your project. This happened through our expanding code library with over 6 million sections of code and dedicated workflows to parse through regulations. And now we've really reintroduced UpCodes as this single platform for codes, assemblies, and building products research. And you now have powerful tools to help with compliance and product research. With UpCodes, you have a unified library of over 6.7K city, state, and federal codes, over 1,800 detailed diagrams that illustrate code requirements, over 12,000 UL, GA, and UpCodes assemblies, and over 70,000 building products across a wide range of CSI divisions. On top of that, UpCodes also gives you access to powerful tools like Copilot, Search, and Projects, which helps accelerate your design to construction. Let's take a quick look at the 4 libraries that make up the UpCodes ecosystem. First up is Code Library. Code Library is your reliable and up-to-date source for adopted codes. We have over 6,700 city, state, and federal codes, over 209,000 local amendments across 80 plus jurisdictions, and over 7,000 of those code sections being updated monthly by our content team. You have seamless access to codes. You can compare codes by jurisdiction or code year, and you can filter codes by name, year, or publication. Second, UpCodes includes a growing diagrams library. These are high fidelity illustrations that help you understand complex code requirements. You can visually unpack the codes to gain a clear understanding of what the code is saying. And you can also filter through the diagrams and view related code sections. Third, UpCodes includes an assemblies library. This library is the best way to modernize your assembly research and accelerate that design to construction. We currently host over 12,000 UL, GA, and UpCodes assemblies, where you can scan assemblies with easy-to-read titles, surface assemblies faster and more efficiently through search, and then curate the assemblies that match your project criteria. Finally, UpCodes includes Products Library. Products Library helps simplify product discovery and selection and includes over 70,000 building products. With Products Library, you gain product awareness and context. You have a single place to store products and collaborate, and you can easily, contact a manufacturer or order product samples as needed. And we have a lot more coming with Products Library in the coming weeks and months as well. And with that, let me hand things off to Adam Martin, who will share more on how Lake Flato, a customer of UpCodes, approaches building codes and how they leverage our platform for project management. Adam, why don't you take things away?
Truly happy to be here. think this is a really exciting topic. All right, we'll jump right into it since I know everybody's busy. So let's jump into it. The way we like to think about sort of regulation of the built environment, um, if you take in your head and you think about health, safety, welfare, that's a concept, right, that we as architects are very familiar with. Um, Welfare is more associated with sort of the planning department, right? Uh, Safety is more associated with the building department. And so part of the battle with codes, I think, is often just understanding where to go for what, and also that there's certain terminologies, right, that are used interchangeably. So you look at sort of the welfare side of things, and you look at community development, development services, planning and zoning, zoning enforcement. There's a lot of different terms that are used to sort of hint at that side of building codes, which is the side that we're not really on. We're going to move over to the safety side where the building department is, right? Understand those terms, right? Building safety division, development services. And then also understand that they're more concerned about safety, which is building codes, IBC, ADA, NFPA, and sort of understanding the terms associated with that world of environmental, built environment regulation. So if you can keep these two things clear in your head, I think it really helps you understand where to go for what, for which codes. So jumping into that side regarding building codes, there's something called base codes and adopted codes. So base codes you're most familiar with would be published by the ICC and the NFPA. They're the books that you can go and purchase online and get a hard copy of. Uh, and ICC and NFPA are obviously the sort of, they both have overarching building codes that are similar in a lot of ways, but are also different um, in some ways. Base code ends up being adopted into law, right, by authorities having jurisdiction, and those things can be adopted at federal, state, county, municipal level. Uh, and the adopted code gets edited from the base code. You have amendments, you have additions and subtractions from the base code. I think that's something that's very important, to understand is that when you're looking at base code, you might not actually be looking at the amended, code that is uh, really actually what the law is regarding building codes. Um, and of course, jurisdictions can handle their adopted codes in all different ways, right? They all have different processes. They all have different ways of adopting code, and they all have different ways of also enforcing. The building department has different ways of enforcing code and getting to code compliance on buildings. This is just to show you maybe an idea of these different processes, right? In each state, has uh, different levels of code adoption and different legal structures that cause code to be adopted in certain ways. So it's not the same in every state. Um, so, looking at these codes, right? Virginia Construction Code, California Building Code, Oregon Structural Specialty Code, Building Code of New York State, Georgia State Minimum Standard Building Code. So you look at all these, and if you're not familiar with that state, Lake Flato practices nationally, so we have to understand what we're looking at and which code we're using all the time. And so, looking at Oregon structural specialty code, for instance, if you're not from Oregon, is like, what in the world is that? Is this just for structural engineers? And it's, no, all of these are actually adopted codes that have been amended from a base code. I believe all of these are, amended from an ICC base code. And this is where, this is where UpCodes is really kind of helping and changing things because in UpCodes, as soon as you open the interface, you'll be able to see every code that is being adopted at almost every level. Um, and that's something that's UpCode is growing, and continuing to update every time a new state or city adopts, building codes. And it's great to see because those codes are adopted on individual schedules, individual cycles, and so being able just to open Austin, for instance, and look at all the building codes that have been adopted for Austin and have that right at your fingertips to open up Windows and search the code is it's pretty amazing. It's pretty impressive. And then also you can see here they tell you when it's an amended code um, versus a not amended code. And so that's also helpful to know if it's the base code that they're actually using, or if some changes have been put in there by the city or the municipality. So I think most of us are architects are probably familiar with this diagram. This might be older because of when I was in architecture school, but Ching was uh, uh, the book by Ching, The Building Codes Illustrated, was like the sort of Bible that we all bought for building codes, right? And looking back at it, coming back and taking it off the shelf after I had done analysis on a few different buildings, reading through this, I realized this isn't really how it necessarily works, right? When you actually start diving into the code, you may start, at occupancy classification, and you may end at means of egress, but this middle part seems to get out of control often when you're trying to figure out how to analyze a building. And so, you start going back and forth, and it starts feeling like everything is kind of affecting everything else. And I think uh, it's good to acknowledge that reality, that it's not just this kind of linear process through the codes. So my new diagram is this where it's everything is kind of affecting everything. You start out maybe with use and occupancy of the building, uh, and you try to figure out these other things and how they're affecting sort of use and occupancy and construction type, sprinkler systems. Eventually, right, you take your use and occupancy, and you take your height, your stories, your area, and you figure out the occupant load factor, uh, and you get to the egress sizing and configuration. And if that's not enough, of course, you have tons of other items that may be affected by these as well. But big picture, I think it's maybe a more realistic way to think about it. So we're going to hop on over to the code calculator here. Once you open up codes, it's a very intuitive interface. It's easy to get around in, and you'll see I have several projects up here. And okay, so once you get into the UpCodes interface, right, you'll have a list of projects if you've been working on several projects. Each project gets its own sort of space to work within, um, which is really handy feature. But let's do the overview real quick first. So you'll go straight to codes, right, and you'll have um, every state, and then also specific jurisdictions under that state that UpCodes has uploaded, uh, and you'll be able to see which codes have been adopted in every state. Um, what's what's great about this is you can also go to adoptions by publisher as well. And let's say you just wanted to like compare, uh, you wanted to compare base code and you wanted to compare, amended code, or you had some questions or how something changed. But you can go up here, and if you go to adoptions by publisher, uh, and you go to, let's say, I think I was doing ASHRAE for energy code, you will be able to see, where which energy codes UpCodes has, which ASHRAE codes UpCodes has on their platform. And let's say I'm looking at ASHRAE 90.1, which is the commercial energy code. You can quickly gauge which states have adopted which this ASHRAE 90.1 2019. You'll be able to see which states have adopted it with and without amendments. So, if you wanted to look at the base code here, you could look at it at one of the jurisdictions that's adopted it without amendments. And then, of course, many states have adopted it with amendments, right? So just, again, goes to show the importance of knowing, what those amendments are when you're in certain various places. Um, next part of this, I want to go straight to a project here to show you guys. This is just a hypothetical project we were putting together, and the fun part about this is UpCodes has these code calculators, right? Um, and you fill it out with all the information that you know about your project. In this case, this is sort of me already filling it out, right? But it's all just text-based, right? You fill it out, this graph, and this is like a hotel project essentially that I'm sort of simulating in the software, right? And so let's say I have a first floor. This is floor number one. I've got a lobby, restaurant, retail, merch area, maybe a back of house area. I know what the occupancy is here, so I just put in the occupancy from the list of drop downs, right, of occupancy types, function of the space, and can also put in gross area. I can put in net area, which from there it calculates the occupant load for you. And then you also define where these spaces are egressing to. So you're building a egress pathway when you start to fill out these areas down here, and then you can start to check which which pathway various spaces are egressing to. And so with that, you've kind of simulated, right, the building, the egress pathways, the occupant load factors, and UpCodes is keeping track of all of that information for us, which is awesome. And then after you do the first floor, you can repeat stories or you can add more stories. Uh, and in this case, I'm adding 5 more levels here at 12-foot height, and adding some guest rooms as a group of guest rooms with an R1 occupancy, you know, defining the uses, back of house use, guest room use, their areas in square feet, coming out with a occupant load automatically, and where do those spaces exit to. Um, this is all it's just really intuitive to do and easy to fill out all of this once you have an idea of sort of what your building use and occupancy is. Um, and then with this information, this goes into the code calculator and you start getting outputs. Now, the great thing about this is you don't have to fill out everything, right? You can fill out like, just as much as and it'll start bringing up uh, various sort of parts of the code, various factors of the code. So it really goes back to that diagram, right, where it's sort of everything is affecting everything, and UpCodes is sort of trying to track those everything that's happening and kind of cross-reference everything. So if we just save and view requirements on this, I've already filled out sort of the sprinkler system and the construction type. Um, you'll see right away, oh, I must have, I filled out something wrong here, right? Because it has it in red. And what it's telling me is that the top of my building is too tall. Um, and if I go here and I like see the calculation, why is it telling me this? It'll tell me, per this table, you're exceeding, right, that height. You need to go look at this section. And of course, you can go open that section immediately and get to the table right there and start looking at, well, what's the height above grade plane that I need to meet? Or in this case, I understand what I did, which is I have too low of a construction type. I need to increase the construction type in order to make this building work. So we're going to X that out, and we're going to go back to edit inputs. And my construction type here is 5A. Now, with what I've set up as, I think, a 6-story building, I can't really do 5A, right, unless I have a podium structure or something like that. So if I just bump this all the way up to, let's say, type 1B, and I hit save and view requirements down here, right? All of a sudden that red is gone because I am within my building height and my occupancies fit within the height required on those tables. So this, one of my colleagues was great. He basically said, uh, this is great. It's like TurboTax for building codes, which is kind of what it feels like. You're filling it out and you're getting excellent information, excellent feedback, and you're able to sort of adjust and change and figure out what you need to do. to make the building, code compliant, essentially. Um, the next feature I would like to just really touch on as well, is the AI feature here that we've been using, I think, in the office quite a bit. Uh, and it's an AI based. You chat with it, right? Let me pull up my question here. So if I typed in, like, is the handrail extension required at the bottom of a stair? This is something that changed in the accessibility codes, I think in 2012. So it'll give me an answer, right? It'll look through various codes that are uploaded. I can specify where I really want it to be, which code I really want it to be looking at, and in which jurisdiction. So let's just say, so we can certainly read through this, right? Ends of handrails should be terminated towards a wall, guard, walking surface, continuous. And you can see where the reference is and the source is here. And then I think Ashish mentioned this earlier, which was, you get very helpful diagrams as well that are that come with the code, that are attached to the code. So it's sort of a building up of a type of UpCodes is generating these diagrams that are just super helpful to get the bigger picture, for especially if you're just learning how all this works, right? One of the issues we had here a little while back was we're looking at sprinkler systems, right, in soffits, trying to understand, when do we have to put a sprinkler, when do we have to sprinkler the soffit, or the seal within the ceiling of a combustible kind of ceiling structure, right? uh, if you're doing wood construction. um, that was one that kind of took me off guard, because I was using Copilot and jumped in and said, I don't really know exactly if I need this or not. Um, the great thing about this is that when you jump into these various codes, it's actually searching all of them at once, and so it pulled up sections from the IBC, and the IBC was a little bit vague on it. But it also pulled up sections of NFPA 13, which is a sprinkler code, and the sprinkler code goes into more detail on that specific topic. And so you can, of course, open any of these, right, and look at them side by side, uh, and sort of see what's applicable and see what's not applicable, and compare and contrast. So just having this whole code just right at your fingertips, and being able to search any text in it, and figure out how to get to a solution is just it's just super helpful. So, um, and I think with that, I'll bring it to a conclusion, kind of where what I think about this. I really do. I think here at Lake Flato, we really have, like, accelerated our ability to, like, search the code, right? Figure out the solution. Copilot is great. It gets you in the ballpark of which code you need to be in and where you need to look. Uh, and of course, the diagrams, right, that UpCodes produces are really helpful when you're mentoring others and you're teaching others in the office. Um, the fact that it's also the latest building codes, the latest amended building codes across the entire country, is a huge plus for us as well, just doing work
Mhm.
across the country. And quickly searchable in one place. uh, you know uh, it's been super helpful, and um, looking forward to continuing to use it on our projects. So that, give it to you, Manad.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. That was really thorough presentation. I actually got a couple of pointers that I'm going to use in my own onboarding videos. So
Yeah.
thanks for that.
Quick question, and I think this may be at the top of everyone's minds. One is, how did you do, let's talk about something like the code calculator. How did you do this prior to UpCodes? And by you, I mean, whether it's at your firm, whether it's you at other firms, what is the general process you followed? What pushed you over the line to try the UpCodes code calculator? And a second part of the question is, what kind of value do you see in using the code calculator versus following any of the older processes?
So like Flato, we used to use a software that or a kind of a hosting website that we could use and look at the PDFs of the code across the office. Wasn't extremely searchable. Didn't have the same sort of, and also it didn't have any amended code, right? So you're just looking at the base code. You're probably having to go to the municipal website or somewhere, in the municipal code to see if you can figure out what the amendments are if they're published, um, or calling up a building official, right?
Hmm.
Uh, Previous to that, I've been at firms that we just have the collection of books, and so you've got the book and you're just searching through the pages and trying to find where to go and where you're going to get the best information.
Yeah.
What was the second part of that question? And not, I didn't catch it.
What value have you found in using the UpCodes code calculator versus some of your older processes? And it could be in terms of anything, the ease of use or just the fact that you don't actually have to look up the code section. This does something to you, but for you, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're always going to have to look up, where the code section is, just for your own peace of mind, right? But I do think it gives you a bit of a head start in understanding, uh, how big can this building be? How tall can this building be? I mean, it's fascinating to me that we're living in a time when we're adding new construction types to the building code for mass timber, right? And
Hmm.
so we all of a sudden have these new construction types that we never had before. So seeing how that works as well, and uh, I think it just gives you a real good head start, and it gives you a real good
Hmm.
ability to interact with the code in a way that you that I have never sort of interacted with before.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you mentioned that, I think you said something really interesting at the start of your answer, which is looking up code sections. That's something we definitely recommend everyone does when they actually use the code calculator. At the end of the day, it's a tool similar to Revit or Grasshopper. You definitely want to cross-check your own answers. But just tying into that, how do you recommend you transition the mentality of either a firm or individuals who are not really used to the digital first interface, who may question, whether codes are accurate. And there was a question that came up from Robert here. In your daily practice, do you assume up codes are 100% accurate, or do you always double check against the version published by the AHJ? Do you have any tips or recommendations there in terms of one, transitioning the mindset from hard copies to digital first, and second, do you double check the codes with the AHJ and the requirements separately?
Uh, I don't. I've spoken with Nod and Ashish about this, and I think I have pretty good confidence that you guys are copying the code, right? Not copying, but you guys are reproducing the published code that's on the city websites, right? That's word for word, and so um, and I think it'd be interesting to sort of, I don't know, see your response on this, Nanad, because
Yeah.
I think it is. From what I've found, it's very accurate. I haven't found any errors that I can think of. And also, you guys have always been one email or phone call away
Yeah.
if there was anything. I think at one point we were doing mass timber and it hadn't been adopted yet in one state, and so we had to look at another state's code to sort of do the code calculator with it.
Yeah.
But that's the only thing I can think of. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, Robert, who asked the question, we have a content team that is dedicated to doing this. We track over 200, 2,000 AHJ websites. We've built a whole backend infrastructure to support, the codes that come in and being able to digitize them to auto link sections and the definitions that you see in there. So it's really a lot of software that's doing the work. But then we also have a QA/QC process internally where we, check the codes on UpCodes. In addition to that, if you're working in a jurisdiction and you scroll down on the jurisdictions page on UpCodes, you'll find something called adoption info, which is essentially a list of all of the jurisdictionally adopted content that we have tracked and that we have incorporated into the books on UpCodes, along with links to original documents. So the source is right there for you. You actually don't need to Google anything. You can click on that source. It'll actually take you to the PDF that is hosted by the jurisdiction if you want to view the original content. That is our source. It's the law. So you can do that verification as well. We are actually trying to make it easier for you to do that by including a link to that original document. So please test that out. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to hop on a call to help you out with that. And then, Adam, another question that I get from a lot of people is, I work with a lot of firms that have offices across the country. And as you can imagine, there may be certain people in the firm who are in charge of QA/QC, who have to review multiple projects, either internally within the firm or they are doing peer reviews for other projects outside of the firm. How do they use UpCodes to sort of make their work more efficient, or do you have any tips for them in terms of collaboration or just the content and comparing codes across different jurisdictions?
Yeah, I mean, there's the ability, I think, in UpCodes, when you're looking at various sections, to add notes and to add, more detailed notes about your project, like I sort of went over a little bit, was, each project you have your own sort of space to work in, and you can share that, I believe, with others, right? And we can share notes on projects and back and forth, right? And say, hey, this, look at this section. It's kind of important for what we're doing here or there in the project, perhaps. So there's the ability to sort of document your route that you're taking through the code, which is also, another super helpful thing, as opposed to, the code book with all the post-it notes taped to it. So yep.
Yeah, absolutely. That's commenting and bookmarking code sections within projects. There is another question here, and this may be more for me, Adam, than you. The question is, do you anticipate future service to include local zoning regulations, and can the program generate a codes table that can be inserted to permit documents? And what is the cost of this service? All right, so there's three questions here, Alexander. Thanks for those. So zoning is a kind of a different animal altogether. Every jurisdiction or even local cities and counties, all of them have their own zoning regulations. We do not plan to host zoning regulations, unfortunately. If we do, we'll probably host them for major metropolitan areas. The only jurisdiction that we do have zoning text for is New York City. And it's interesting because of how powerful UpCodes is. You can search through it, you can look for your zoning codes, but you can also ask Copilot questions about the New York City zoning text, which is very powerful. Unfortunately, given the variation in zoning codes that you have across the country, we don't plan to host them for other jurisdictions. Keep those requests coming, though. If I can convince my leadership to do that, we will do that someday. Can the program generate a codes table that can be inserted into permit documents? So it does generate a report from the code calculator that Adam shared previously. At the top of the page, you have something called download report. And when you click on that button, you can download code sheet. You can download a PDF or an Excel file of the summary that Adam shared. So it will show you all of the numbers. It will show you what conditions are compliant and non-compliant. And you can insert that into your PDF sheets, into your Revit sheets or drawing sheets. You can also download it as an Excel file in case you want to erase information that may not be relevant, or you want to add information. You can download an Excel version of that as well. That's only available on the summary page, though, once you actually run the code calculations. Ashish will probably brief us about how you can sign up and the cost of the services at the end of the call. Another question that I've come in is any observations about working with existing buildings and alternate compliance strategies? Unfortunately, not. So the code calculator currently is geared towards new construction. It doesn't work very well with existing buildings and using codes that are not current or that we do not host. It is very much based on the codes that we host, whether they be current or historical. As long as we have that version of codes on UpCodes, it'll calculate the compliance requirements based on those codes. So it doesn't work very well with existing buildings or alternative compliance strategies. Quick question from Ian here. Adam, how long have you been using UpCodes for?
I've been using it. It's hard to say. Probably for probably 7 years. When were you? When was UpCodes founded? I should ask because I have been
20,
using it for
2016, yeah.
2016. Yeah, so it's I've probably been using it for 7 years or so. Uh,
Ah.
and it started because I was trying to do code compliance for projects in California, and
Mhm.
which if any of you are in California, you know how difficult it can get. So
Mhm.
UpCodes was a great assist to
Mhm.
find the right codes in California building code. So yeah.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. Quick question from Nate here. I've previously used ChatGPT in similar ways that we can use Copilot, and ChatGPT was consistently hallucinating and making stuff up. Not surprising. Assuming ChatGPT is the current state of the art of LLMs, perhaps an inaccurate assumption, how is Copilot able to sort through the information better than other AIs? Great question, Nate. And I sometimes hear this as well with people I talk to when I talk to about Copilot. What makes UpCodes Copilot different from ChatGPT or Gemini or any of the other tools out there like MS Copilot is the fact that the training data that the engine is using is very limited, and it is specific to construction codes. Not just that, it's specific to the construction codes that we host. It is trained on the codes that we host as well as the diagrams we host and the assemblies we host. Now, a lot of the way in which a response is generated is dependent on the prompt itself. What makes Copilot on UpCodes really nice is that it is conversational. So you can ask it a follow-up question based on a previous question. It sort of remembers the history and is able to build on the answer that was provided. So a couple of tooltips there. For example, if you ask it a question, it generates a vague answer, supply more information. If it's still a little vague, ask it, what are your assumptions? What are your calculations? Show me your calculation breakdowns. Once it supplies you all that information, you can plug in more and more data about your project. So the answer becomes more project specific. No LLM is ever going to be perfect at the end of the day. It is an AI model. But what you can do is you can use your prompting or your questioning to make sure that you get a more precise or project specific answer. In addition to that, you also have inline citations to code sections that it is used to generate the answer. So you know exactly what the source is. You can go to the source code section, look at the code section. So it's not going to cut down your code research time from 20 minutes to 0 minutes. It will definitely cut it down from 20 minutes to 5 minutes. So you're saving that amount of time. But yeah, like any tool, I definitely recommend cross-checking the answers. Quick question from Muhammad here. Does UpCodes make any edits or changes to codes and assemblies, or are they copied exactly as posted by the jurisdiction? Another great question. It is copied exactly as they are hosted by the jurisdictions. Even if there are mistakes in that original adoption, that's exactly how we host them. In fact, we reach out to jurisdictions a lot of times and let them know, hey, this seems to be incorrect. Do you want to correct it? A lot of times jurisdictions have actually replied to us saying, thank you for noting that. And they actually issue a errata or bulletin later on that captures that correction. So we host it exactly as hosted by the jurisdiction. Question from Kyle here. Ninad, are you working directly with any local code officials or building departments across the US? I can see the Copilot and projects tool being an asset to overly burden AHJs to streamline their intake pipelines and limited resources. Thanks for the question, Kyle. And we absolutely are. A lot of building departments across the US have UpCode subscriptions. They have access to Copilot. They use it for over-the-counter reviews. They use it for plan reviews. They use site inspectors use it. We have accounts that range from a single seat to about 100 seats for certain building departments. But yes, they're used heavily. The way in which they use it may be slightly different. A couple of building departments that I work with UpCodes is used by their site inspectors. So, they're on their tablets and they're on their iPads and they're out on site and marking stuff up. A lot of plan reviewers use us, and that is helpful as well, creating projects. A couple of, I think I was speaking to a building department that is planning to use the code calculator and send out an Excel file to applicants that they fill in. And you can actually upload an Excel file to the code calculator so it fills in the information automatically and they can run the compliance check. So it sort of cuts down the time that they have to manually go and do a code calculation to verify if a particular design is compliant. So yes. Question from Todd here. A normal workflow would involve sending a Copilot response to the ASJ, but last time I looked, we can't generate an output. Is that still a limitation? Todd, good question. So we've built in a feature where you can bookmark a Copilot answer to your project. So that sort of saves the Copilot conversation you had, but you cannot print that or you can't export it out of a code. So I would just recommend copy pasting it into a document. That's a good feature request, so I'll definitely make a note of that and let our product team know if you can consider it in the future. So thanks for that question. A question from John. Does UpCodes track and incorporate published code interpretations from local state building officials? We do not. We only host content that has been adopted into law. And so the codes are content that has been adopted into law. We are working on certain ideas in-house to see how building departments can better inform plan applicants about their interpretation. Nothing is concrete yet. We are still, parsing through all the different ideas that we have. But currently, we only host the law that is hosted by the jurisdiction. So a lot of great questions there. Adam, I'd like to thank you for hopping on this webinar and showing us how you use UpCodes at your firm. Ashish, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Ninad. Yes, and thank you, Adam, for joining us today. Yeah, so as we come to a close, just want to remind you that in order to gain access to some of the more advanced tools that Adam showed us today, like Code Calculator, Copilot, and even others that were mentioned, you will need to subscribe to one of our paid plans. You can learn more about our paid offerings by visiting our pricing page. You can also just pull out your phone and scan the QR code you see on the screen. Our paid subscriptions start with a 2-week trial. So you do have time to evaluate the tools. One thing I will say, if you do reach out to us and say, I need to extend my trial, we also have done that in the past. We really want you to find value before you subscribe and pay us. But yeah, this is a quick way to learn about our pricing offerings. And with that, thank you all for joining us today. If you have a technical question, you can reach out to us at support@up.codes. I know there might have been maybe a handful of questions that we didn't get to. If you have any more questions, technical questions, or even questions that don't necessarily relate to the content that was presented today, please reach out to us at support@up.codes. We really value your feedback and your ideas. A lot of times, all of those feedback points translate over into our roadmap and what we build. A quick reminder, you'll receive a recording of this webinar after we conclude. We appreciate you spending time with us. We hope you have a really great rest of your week. Once again, thank you, Adam and Ninad, for a great presentation. Thank you so much, all. Have a good rest of your day.